Welcome to the show. Today we'll be traveling back in time, way back, to explore the ancient language of Sanskrit. You might be thinking, what does a language that's thousands of years old have to do with our modern digital world? Well, that's what makes this so fascinating. Sanskrit has this amazing reputation for precision and logic. It's so structured, so rule-based, that it almost feels like, well, code. And that's not just a coincidence. Scholars and even computer scientists are starting to realize that Sanskrit's structure might just hold the key to more intuitive and efficient programming languages, and maybe even AI. So if you are ready to unlock the secrets of Sanskrit and explore its connection to the future of tech, then stick with us. And if you enjoy these journeys into the unexpected, be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch all of our future episodes. Sanskrit's grammatical framework is so detailed, it's almost like a program itself. Every word, every sentence is constructed following very specific rules, kind of like the syntax in a programming language. Think about it. One little typo can crash your entire program, but Sanskrit was designed to eliminate that ambiguity. It gets even more interesting. Even NASA back in the 80s explored using Sanskrit as a potential machine language for AI systems. Why? Its unambiguous nature and ability to express those complex ideas with so much less redundancy. Okay, so we've established that Sanskrit is precise, but how does that play out in, say, a programming language?
What's fascinating is how Sanskrit handles the concept of data types and structures. Think about it. Modern programming languages use things like integers, strings, and booleans. Sanskrit obviously doesn't use those terms, but it has those concepts baked into its grammar. For instance, consider the Sanskrit word anka, which means number. That could easily be your integer data type. Or varna, meaning letter or sound, practically a character type right there. Then there's pada, meaning word, which is a perfect match for a string data type. Sanskrit even has this concept of tattva, which means truth, aligning perfectly with Boolean, true or false. It's really remarkable how these fundamental building blocks of programming are almost pre-programmed into the language itself.
It's like Sanskrit had this foresight into the digital world. But let's move on to programming constructs, things like variables, loops, and functions. How would those work in a Sanskrit-inspired language?
Let's consider the Sanskrit word namatana. It means repository of a name, which actually perfectly describes what a variable does in programming. It holds a value. You could declare variables with this term, add type annotations for extra clarity. For example, antaranjika namatana, anka x, could mean declare a local variable x of type number. Incredibly intuitive and yet precise.
That's amazing. It's like the code almost writes itself. But what about constants? They're vital in programming to ensure that certain values never change.
Sanskrit has that covered too. Remember the concept of sthira. It means permanent or fixed, a perfect match for a constant. You could declare a constant like this, sthira pada pi equals 3.14159. This tells the program that pi is a constant of type pada, which we just discussed, and it's always going to have that value.
It's truly remarkable how much sense this all makes.
It is, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting when we start discussing control flow.
By control flow, do you mean those if-then-else statements and loops that guide what actions a program takes?
Exactly. Sanskrit has a word, niyam, which means rule or condition. Perfect fit for those conditional statements. So you could write a line of code like this. Yadi, x0. Tarhi, print positive. Can you guess what that does?
Let's see. Yadi must mean if, and tarhi probably means then. So is this line of code saying if x is greater than 0, then print positive?
You are absolutely right. And you can even nest conditions using clear markers like anyatha, meaning otherwise.
That's so cool. How about loops? How would you repeat an action multiple times in a Sanskrit-based language?
Well, Sanskrit has a specific word for repetition, parivartana. Think about how poetic meters or chandas in Sanskrit use repetition. We can apply the same concept to create loops. So a loop could look like this. Parivartana, anka I equals 1, I equals 10, I plus plus, print a I. This loop would iterate from 1 to 10, printing each value of I as it goes.
Wow, I am starting to see how elegant and powerful a Sanskrit-inspired programming language could be.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even delved into functions and recursion. Do you remember?
Kriya, action, right?
Yes. A function in this hypothetical language could be called a kriya. We could define a function like this. Kriya yogya, anka x, anka y. Pratipadanam x plus y. This defines a function called yogya, which takes two numbers as inputs, x and y, adds them together, and then pratipadana, meaning returns, gives back the sum.
Okay, I'm getting the hang of this. A function is a kriya. It takes some input, does something with it, and then returns a result. What about recursion? That concept always seems so tricky.
Recursion, where a function calls itself, is beautifully represented in Sanskrit poetry and grammar. Consider poetic meters or chandas, where patterns are repeated in a structured way. That's the essence of recursion. For example, calculating a factorial, where you multiply a number by all the whole numbers less than it, could be done recursively using the kriya structure.
So you define a kriya that first checks if the number is 1. If it is, it returns 1. Otherwise, it multiplies the number by the factorial of the number minus 1. That's so elegant.
And that inherent elegance is what makes Sanskrit so compelling as a basis for programming languages. It's not about simply swapping English keywords for Sanskrit ones. It's about leveraging the logic, the structure, the philosophy embedded within the language itself.
You know, what I find most fascinating is that Sanskrit isn't a dead language. It's still spoken and studied by millions, and its principles are very much alive.
Absolutely. That vibrancy is what makes the prospect of a Sanskrit-inspired programming paradigm so intriguing.
Just imagine being able to tap into this ancient wisdom to create something innovative in technology. It's like building a bridge between the past and the future.
Precisely. It's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we think about logic, reasoning, and communication. Sanskrit can help us reimagine how we interact with machines.
I completely agree. Now, I know we've talked at length about the potential advantages of using Sanskrit in programming, but are there any hurdles, any challenges we might need to consider?
Of course, no approach is without its challenges, and such a paradigm shift would certainly encounter some resistance. Overcoming the comfort of the status quo would be one of the biggest hurdles.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. The world of tech is built on languages like Python, Java, C++, Sol. Developers are very familiar with these languages, their syntax, their quirks. Suddenly introducing a language that's inspired by Sanskrit with its completely different way of thinking, its grammar, it could feel intimidating. There's always a natural resistance to change, especially when it comes to something as fundamental as programming languages.
That's a very valid point. It's human nature to stick with what you know, even if there might be a better way out there.
Exactly. Then there's the challenge of adoption. Even if we create this brilliant Sanskrit-based language, it won't gain traction unless developers actually use it.
So how do we encourage people to adopt it? How do we convince developers to embrace this new way of thinking?
It comes down to demonstrating the benefits. We need to show developers how a Sanskrit-inspired language can make their lives easier, their code cleaner, their systems more robust.
Show them the advantages in terms of precision, efficiency, maybe even error reduction. Make it irresistible.
Exactly. We have to create compelling tools, resources, and examples that showcase the unique advantages of this approach.
That makes sense. But what about technical challenges? I mean, Sanskrit is an intricate language with very different grammar compared to what we're used to in programming. Are there any technical hurdles we need to address?
Yes, you're right. There are definitely technical challenges to consider. One of the biggest ones is figuring out how to handle non-linear grammar in modern computing.
Non-linear grammar. Can you explain what that means?
Most programming languages are linear. You write the code in a sequence and the machine executes it in that same order. But Sanskrit is much more flexible. The word order isn't as rigid, and meaning is often conveyed through context and inflection.
So how do you translate that fluidity into the rigid world of computers?
That's the million-dollar question. We need to develop new algorithms, new parsing techniques that can handle this nonlinearity, this ambiguity inherent in Sanskrit.
Ambiguity. Isn't that a bad thing when it comes to programming?
It can be, but it can also be a strength. Remember, human language is full of ambiguity, yet we understand each other perfectly fine. The key is context. If we can teach machines to understand context in the same way humans do, we can unlock a whole new level of sophistication in programming.
So it's about harnessing the power of context rather than trying to eliminate ambiguity completely.
Precisely. And this is where fields like artificial intelligence and natural language processing come into play. Combining these fields with the principles of Sanskrit could help us create something truly groundbreaking.
This is all incredibly exciting, but also very challenging.
Challenges are simply opportunities in disguise, and the potential rewards here are immense.
I agree. Now, I'd like to shift gears slightly and talk about the practical applications of all this. Where do you think we could see Sanskrit-inspired programming making a real impact in the world?
The opportunities are vast, both in academia and industry. In academia, Just imagine a whole new field of research dedicated to exploring this intersection of Sanskrit, linguistics, and computer science. Scholars could be studying how to adapt Sanskrit's logical framework to create entirely new computational models, or how to use its grammatical principles to improve machine learning algorithms.
It would be like opening up an entirely new dimension of knowledge and possibility. What about industries? Where could we see practical applications?
Consider areas where accurate and context-aware language processing is absolutely crucial. Fields like healthcare, law, and finance come to mind. Imagine, for instance, a medical AI that can understand a patient's symptoms not just by analyzing keywords, but by actually grasping the nuances of their language, just like a human doctor would.
Or consider a legal AI that could interpret complex legal documents with pinpoint accuracy, avoiding those costly misinterpretations. That would be truly revolutionary.
And let's not forget finance. An AI system trained on Sanskrit's principles of logic and reasoning could potentially analyze market trends and make predictions with an accuracy we can't even imagine right now.
The possibilities are truly mind-boggling.
And let's not forget the rapidly growing field of AI ethics. Sanskrit, with its inherent emphasis on dharma, or right conduct, could play a crucial role in developing AI systems that are not only intelligent, but ethical and responsible.
That's a very important point to consider. As AI grows more powerful, we need to ensure it's aligned with human values.
Absolutely. Sanskrit, with its deep philosophical roots, can offer a valuable framework for guiding that alignment.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me.
Me too. It's exciting to think about how an ancient language like Sanskrit could be shaping the future of technology.
It reminds us that sometimes the most innovative ideas come from looking back at our past.
Well said. Innovation often lies in rediscovering and reimagining the wisdom of those who came before us.
And Sanskrit, with its timeless elegance and precision, has a wealth of wisdom just waiting to be explored.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think what we're seeing is not just a potential new programming language, but a completely new way of thinking about computing.
It's like we're bridging the gap between human thought and machine logic, creating systems that are both powerful and intuitive.
Exactly. And Sanskrit could very well be the key to unlocking that future.
Now, shifting gears a bit, we've talked about how Sanskrit's structure could be revolutionary for programming, but let's dive into some specific examples. Remember how we talked about those concise, rule-based statements called sutras? Well, those could be the backbone of how we design the syntax, or the grammar of a Sanskrit-inspired programming language.
Yes, the sutras. A beautiful embodiment of the principles of conciseness, modularity, and logical order, all essential for clean and efficient code. They're like tiny nuggets of wisdom packed with meaning.
I love that analogy, nuggets of wisdom. How would that actually translate into code?
Let's take, for example, conditional statements. Those if-then-else structures we use all the time. In a Sanskrit-based language, a conditional statement could look like this. Yadi, x, 0, tarhi, print up positive. Notice how compact and elegant it is. Yadi, meaning if, tarhi, meaning then, followed by the condition and the action. It's like a Sanskrit sutra transformed into code.
It's so intuitive. Even someone with no knowledge of Sanskrit could probably figure out what that code is doing.
Precisely, and that intuitiveness is a huge advantage. It makes the language more accessible, even for beginners.
Now let's move on to functions. They are essential for breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more reusable chunks. How would they work in this system?
Functions, or actions, could be defined using the term kriya. So a simple function to add two numbers might look like this. Kriya, yogya, xy, pratipadanam, x plus y. Here, yogya is the name of the function, x and y are the inputs, and pratipadanam, meaning to return, sends back the sum of x and y. It's modular, concise, and incredibly clear.
I'm really starting to see the beauty of this approach. It's like taking the elegance and precision of Sanskrit and weaving it directly into the fabric of code.
That's beautifully put. And this elegance isn't merely superficial, it has significant practical implications as well.
How so?
Well, think about error prevention. One of the biggest headaches in programming is dealing with those errors caused by ambiguity or misinterpretation. Sanskrit's strict grammar and emphasis on clarity could help mitigate these issues.
So by designing a language that's inspired by Sanskrit, we could potentially create code that's less prone to errors.
Exactly. The very structure of the language encourages a level of precision and clarity that would naturally minimize the chance of making mistakes.
That's a huge advantage. It could save developers a lot of time debugging and ultimately make systems more reliable as a whole.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond simple syntax errors as well. Sanskrit's focus on context and semantics could help us build AI systems that understand not just the literal meaning of code, but the programmer's intent.
That's taking things to an entirely new level. Imagine an AI that could anticipate what you're trying to achieve with your code rather than just blindly executing instructions.
That's the dream, isn't it? And Sanskrit, with its rich philosophical traditions and emphasis on meaning, could very well be the key to achieving it.
You know, we've talked extensively about Sanskrit's grammar and how it could potentially influence the design of programming languages, but I'm also curious about the philosophical side of things. Sanskrit is profoundly connected to philosophical systems like Nyaya and Mimamsa. How do you think these philosophies could inform the development of artificial intelligence?
That's where things get really interesting. Nyaya, the ancient Indian system of logic, provides a structured approach to reasoning, inference, and knowledge representation. These are all foundational concepts in the field of AI.
So instead of just feeding data into an AI system and hoping for the best, we could use Nyaya principles to guide how that AI processes and understands that data.
Exactly. We could build AI systems that can reason logically, draw inferences from the evidence, and even challenge assumptions, just like a skilled debater would.
That would be a massive step forward in creating AI that's not just intelligent, but also capable of critical thinking.
Precisely. And then there's Mimamsa, the school of thought that focuses on the interpretation of texts. This could be incredibly valuable for natural language processing.
How so?
Mimamsa emphasizes understanding the true meaning of a text by considering its context, the author's intent, those subtle nuances of language. This approach aligns perfectly with the challenges we face in natural language processing.
So instead of just analyzing words in isolation, an AI trained on Mimamsa principles could grasp the deeper meaning of a sentence. It could take into account things like tone, irony, even cultural references.
Exactly. It would be like teaching an AI to read between the lines, to truly understand the subtleties of human communication.
That would be a game changer for things like chatbots, translation software, even sentiment analysis.
Absolutely. Combining the precision of Sanskrit's grammar with the depth of these ancient philosophies, we could unlock a whole new level of sophistication in artificial intelligence.
It's amazing to think that a language that's thousands of years old could hold the key to the future of AI.
It really does showcase how sometimes the most innovative ideas come from revisiting our past and looking at it through a new lens.
Now let's switch gears and talk about another aspect of Sanskrit, its rich vocabulary and intricate system of classification. How could these be useful in the world of computing?
That's a great question. One of the biggest challenges in AI is how to organize and structure knowledge in a way that allows machines to reason effectively. This requires us to build ontologies and taxonomies, essentially systems for categorizing and defining the relationships between concepts.
So it's kind of like creating a map of knowledge that an AI can navigate.
Precisely. And Sanskrit, with its extensive vocabulary and its tradition of creating meticulous classifications, provides a wealth of resources for building those maps.
Can you give us an example?
Certainly. Consider the ancient texts known as the Vedas and Upanishads. They categorize knowledge into broad categories like dharma, meaning duty, artha, wealth, kama, pleasure, and moksha, liberation. These categories offer a framework for understanding different aspects of the human experience, and they could be used to organize knowledge in a way that makes sense to an AI.
So an AI system could use those categories to understand, say, the different motivations behind human actions.
Exactly. It could learn to recognize that some actions are driven by a sense of duty, while others are motivated by the pursuit of pleasure or the accumulation of wealth.
That's fascinating. It's almost like giving the AI a deeper understanding of human psychology.
Precisely. And this understanding could be applied to a wide range of applications, from personal assistants that anticipate your needs to AI systems that can make ethical decisions.
That's powerful stuff. Now, apart from these broad categories, I've also heard that Sanskrit is known for its remarkably detailed taxonomies, particularly in areas like medicine and botany.
That's right. For instance, the ancient text Ayurveda, the traditional Indian system of medicine, classifies diseases, treatments, even substances into a very intricate system.
So an AI could use those rasas to recognize whether someone is feeling happy, sad, angry, or any other emotion.
Exactly. This could be incredibly valuable for creating AI systems that are more empathetic and responsive to human needs.
That's a beautiful vision. It's almost like teaching AI to speak the language of the human heart.
It is, and it all comes back to this concept of bridging the gap between human thought and machine understanding. Sanskrit, with its remarkable depth and precision, can help us build that bridge.
I am completely convinced. Sanskrit isn't some ancient artifact. It's a treasure trove of knowledge and wisdom that can revolutionize how we approach computing.
I wholeheartedly agree. Embracing the principles of this language could lead us to create a future where technology isn't just intelligent, but humane, deeply connected to our human experience.
Yeah, let's delve a little deeper into how the specific logical structures of Sanskrit could enhance AI systems.
Certainly. One of the key aspects of AI is structured reasoning, the ability to follow logical steps to reach a conclusion. And you know what? Sanskrit's syntax and grammar are inherently structured for logical thinking.
It's as if the language itself is a blueprint for constructing logical AI systems.
Precisely. Take, for example, the use of case endings in Sanskrit. This makes the relationship between words in a sentence crystal clear. This could inspire semantic models in AI, where the role of each piece of data is clearly defined, minimizing ambiguity and errors.
So it's like each word in Sanskrit comes with its own little instruction manual, which makes it much easier for an AI to understand how it fits into the big picture.
Exactly. And this emphasis on clarity also extends to how Sanskrit handles complex operations.
You mean things like calculations and decision-making processes?
Yes. Sanskrit's hierarchical structure allows for complex ideas to be broken down into simpler components, just like a well-organized program.
So instead of attempting to process a massive chunk of information all at once, an AI could use Sanskrit-inspired principles to break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Precisely. This makes the entire reasoning process more transparent and much easier to debug, which is essential for building reliable AI systems.
That makes perfect sense. Now, in addition to structured reasoning, I've also heard that Sanskrit can be beneficial for enhancing contextual awareness in AI.
Absolutely. One of the most significant challenges in AI, particularly in natural language processing, is understanding context. Human language is filled with subtle nuances, double meanings, and it's difficult for machines to grasp those subtleties.
So how does Sanskrit come into play here?
One of Sanskrit's strengths is its remarkable ability to convey meaning through context. Words in Sanskrit can have multiple meanings depending on their endings, their position in a sentence, and the overall context of the conversation.
So it's not just about the words themselves, but how they relate to each other and the bigger picture.
Exactly. This is something that AI systems are only beginning to grasp. By drawing inspiration from Sanskrit's context-aware grammar, we could build AI that's better equipped to understand the complexities of human language.
That would be an immense step forward in fields like machine translation, chat bots, and even sentiment analysis.
Absolutely. Imagine an AI that can understand sarcasm, irony, and humor. That would truly be a breakthrough.
That is the dream, isn't it? To have AI that can truly comprehend us, not just process our words.
It is. And Sanskrit, with its rich tradition of nuanced communication, could help make that dream a reality.
Now, I know we touched upon this concept before, but I want to delve a bit deeper into error prevention in AI and the role Sanskrit might play. We've already discussed how Sanskrit's precision can contribute to more logical reasoning in AI and enhance contextual understanding, but could it also help prevent those annoying errors that plague so many software systems?
That's a great question, and the answer is a resounding yes. One of the most significant advantages of Sanskrit's rigorous grammar is its capacity to minimize ambiguity, which is a major source of errors in programming and AI.
So, potentially, by designing systems inspired by Sanskrit, we could create AI that's less prone to making those silly mistakes that sometimes make us question their intelligence.
Precisely. Think about it. In Sanskrit, the meaning of a word is often determined by its ending, its position in a sentence. This leaves very little room for misinterpretation. Unlike in languages like English, where a single word can have multiple meanings depending on the context.
So it's as if Sanskrit has built-in safeguards against ambiguity, leading to fewer errors and more reliable systems overall.
Exactly. And this focus on clarity extends to how Sanskrit handles data types, variable declarations, even the order of operations.
It's like the language itself is designed to prevent you from making those careless mistakes that can result in hours of tedious debugging.
Precisely. And that kind of error prevention is invaluable in AI, where even minor errors can have significant consequences.
Imagine an AI system that's controlling a self-driving car. You certainly wouldn't want any ambiguity or misinterpretations in the code that's responsible for making life or death decisions.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why Sanskrit's focus on precision and clarity is so crucial to the future of AI development.
It's like establishing a solid foundation of logic and rigor that helps prevent those errors from sneaking in from the start.
Exactly. It's about creating AI systems that are not only intelligent, but also robust and incredibly dependable.
Now, I know we briefly discussed this earlier, but I want to explore a little deeper the concept of deductive and inductive reasoning in AI and how Sanskrit might contribute to both.
Certainly.
Could you remind us about those two types of reasoning and why they are so important for artificial intelligence?
Of course. Deductive reasoning is essentially about starting with general principles and then using them to reach specific conclusions. It's similar to solving a logic puzzle, where you use the provided rules to figure out the solution.
So it's about applying known facts to arrive at a new understanding.
Exactly. Inductive reasoning, on the other hand, is the opposite. It involves observing specific instances and then using those observations to draw general conclusions. It's similar to a scientist gathering data from experiments and then forming a hypothesis based on that data.
So it's about using patterns and observations to make broader generalizations.
Precisely. Both types of reasoning are absolutely crucial for the effective functioning of AI systems. Deductive reasoning allows AI to apply rules and knowledge to solve problems, while inductive reasoning allows it to learn from data and adapt to new situations.
Now, where does Sanskrit fit into all of this?
Well, Sanskrit's philosophical system, known as Nyaya, is fundamentally about structured reasoning. It offers a framework for making valid inferences, identifying logical fallacies, and constructing sound arguments.
So it's like a toolbox for logical thinking that we can then apply to AI.
Exactly. By incorporating these Nyaya principles into AI systems, we can teach them to reason more effectively, both deductively and inductively.
Could you give us a practical example of how this might work?
Sure. Imagine an AI system that's designed to analyze legal documents. By applying Nyaya principles, it could learn to identify the key premises in a legal argument, carefully follow the logical steps of that argument, and ultimately reach a valid conclusion.
That would be incredibly valuable for lawyers, judges, really anyone who has to deal with those complex legal matters.
Absolutely. And on the inductive reasoning side, we can utilize Sanskrit's intricate classification system to assist AI systems in learning from data.
How would that work?
Do you recall our earlier discussion about those detailed taxonomies in Ayurveda and other Sanskrit texts? Well, those taxonomies are founded on centuries of meticulous observation and analysis, and they offer a framework for organizing knowledge in a way that's very conducive to inductive reasoning.
So an AI could use those taxonomies to identify patterns in data, just like a scientist uses categories to organize their observations.
Exactly. For instance, a medical AI could leverage Ayurvedic taxonomies to analyze patient data and pinpoint subtle correlations between symptoms, lifestyles, and health outcomes.
That could lead to new medical discoveries and even more personalized approaches to healthcare.
Precisely. By combining Nyaya for deductive reasoning and Sanskrit's taxonomies for inductive reasoning, we can create AI that's not only intelligent, but also capable of logical thought and adaptive learning.
It's truly remarkable to consider that a language thousands of years old could offer such valuable insights into the future of AI.
It just goes to show that sometimes the most cutting-edge ideas are rooted in ancient wisdom.
Now let's shift our focus to another aspect of AI that's gaining increasing importance: semantic precision.
Absolutely.
Could you explain what that means and why it's so critical?
Of course. Semantic precision refers to the ability to accurately and unambiguously represent and understand meaning. It's about ensuring that the words we use, whether in human language or computer code, convey exactly what we intend them to convey.
So it's about eliminating any room for misinterpretation.
Exactly. And this is crucial in AI because even minor errors in meaning can have a significant impact on how an AI system behaves.
Can you provide an example to illustrate this?
Certainly. Imagine an AI system designed for language translation. If the system doesn't grasp the subtle nuances of meaning in different languages, it could easily produce translations that are grammatically correct but make absolutely no sense.
Or it could even be offensive. I've seen some hilarious mistranslations online.
Exactly. And in more serious applications like medical diagnosis or legal analysis, even small errors in meaning could have very serious consequences.
So how can Sanskrit help us achieve this level of semantic precision?
Sanskrit is renowned for its highly developed system of roots, or dhatus. Each root word carries a specific meaning, and it can be combined with prefixes and suffixes to create a vast array of words with related meanings.
It's like each root word is a fundamental building block of meaning, And you can use those blocks to construct a very precise and nuanced vocabulary.
Precisely. And this system of roots and affixes ensures that concepts are clearly defined and easily understood. There's very little room for ambiguity.
So an AI system trained on Sanskrit could learn to understand those subtle shades of meaning that are often lost in translation.
Exactly. It could learn to recognize that words sharing the same root also share a core concept, even if they have different prefixes or suffixes. This would enable the AI to process information with greater accuracy and avoid those costly misunderstandings.
That's incredible. It's like teaching an AI to think like a linguist.
It is, and it really highlights the power of Sanskrit to enhance not just the efficiency of AI, but also its capacity to understand meaning at a deeper, more profound level.
Now, we've talked a great deal about the potential benefits of incorporating Sanskrit into computing, but I'm curious about the practical side of things. How would we go about developing a Sanskrit-based programming language or integrating these concepts into existing AI systems? Is that even feasible?
That's an excellent question. And the answer is that it's definitely feasible, but it would require a collaborative effort between experts from various fields.
Like who, for instance?
We'd need linguists who have a deep understanding of Sanskrit grammar and semantics, computer scientists who can translate those principles into code, and philosophers who can provide guidance on the ethical implications of using such a language.
It sounds like a truly interdisciplinary endeavor.
It is, and it's already happening in various places around the world. Researchers are exploring Sanskrit's computational potential, developing new algorithms inspired by Nyaya logic, and even experimenting with Sanskrit-based coding languages.
That's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
So this isn't just a theoretical idea, it's actually being put into practice.
Absolutely. And as more people recognize the value of Sanskrit in the digital age, I believe we'll see a significant surge in research and development in this area.
I'm eager to see what the future holds for Sanskrit in computing. It feels like we're only scratching the surface of its potential.
I agree. And the most exciting aspect is that it's not just about creating new technologies, it's about reimagining how we think about logic, language, and even consciousness itself.
That's a profound thought. It's like Sanskrit is offering us a new lens through which to view the world of computing.
Exactly. And through that lens, we might just glimpse a future where technology is not only intelligent, but wise and deeply connected to our shared human experience. Embracing the principles of Sanskrit, its precision, its inherent logic, its focus on meaning, we can unlock a wealth of new possibilities in programming, in artificial intelligence, and far beyond.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most innovative solutions come from looking back and re-examining our past, but with fresh eyes.
I couldn't agree more.
Now, let's take a closer look at how those Sanskrit-inspired programming constructs we discussed earlier could actually be used to build practical, real-world applications. Remember our example of a simple arithmetic program?
Yes, the one where we use namatana for declaring variables and styra for constant.
Exactly. Let's build on that. Suppose we have a program to calculate the area of a circle.
Okay, in that case, we would need to define the radius and then use the formula area equals pi times the radius squared.
Precisely. In our Sanskrit-inspired language, it might look something like this, and I'll let you guide me through this.
All right, let's try it. First, we would declare a variable called radius and set it to, let's say, 5. So that would look like namatana anka radius equals 5.
Okay, got it. What's next?
Then we would define pi as a constant using styra. So that would be styrpada pi equals 3.14159.
Makes sense. Then we'd use those to calculate the area.
Exactly. The final line of code would be namadhana anka area equals pi radius radius.
So we're declaring a variable called area, calculating it using the formula. And then to see the result, we would just add a line to print it out.
You got it. It would look like this. Printa area.
I see. So the complete program is essentially a few lines that are clear and straightforward to follow.
Precisely. The Sanskrit-inspired keywords and that structure make the code almost self-explanatory, even for someone who isn't familiar with programming.
Now let's move beyond this simple arithmetic and see how we would handle more complex tasks. What about sorting a list of numbers, for instance?
That's where those control flow constructs we discussed earlier would come into play. Remember niyam for conditional statements and parivartana for loops?
Yes. We had yadi for if, tarhi for then, and anyathai for otherwise. And Parivartana was used for repeating an action multiple times.
Exactly. To sort a list, we could employ a nested loop structure. The outer Parivartana would go through each element in the list, while the inner Parivartana would compare it to all the remaining elements.
Okay, I'm following so far. And then?
Inside those loops, we would use niyam statements to determine if the elements need to be swapped.
So we are essentially using Sanskrit-inspired constructs to implement a classic sorting algorithm.
Precisely. The underlying logic remains the same, but that Sanskrit-based syntax introduces a layer of clarity and elegance to the process.
This is fascinating. It feels almost like we are translating ancient wisdom into the language of modern computing.
Indeed. And this translation has the potential to create systems that are not only more efficient, but also more intuitive for humans to understand and interact with.
Now, let's dive into one of the most exciting areas of AI research, natural language processing, or NLP. We touched upon this briefly before, but I'd love to explore further how Sanskrit's grammar and semantic precision could revolutionize the way machines comprehend and process human language.
Absolutely. Imagine having a voice assistant that could understand not just the words you speak, but also the subtle nuances of your tone and your intent.
That would be incredible.
Right now, most voice assistants heavily rely on keyword recognition and pre-programmed responses. But a Sanskrit-inspired NLP system could go beyond that. It could analyze the grammatical structure of your sentences, the inflections in your voice, and even your cultural context to truly understand what you mean.
So it would be like engaging in a conversation with a machine that genuinely gets you, not just one that responds to keywords.
Exactly. A system like that could revolutionize customer service, education, even therapy. Think about a chatbot that can provide emotional support, or an AI tutor that can personalize lessons based on a student's individual learning style.
Those are fantastic applications. What about machine translation? I'm constantly amazed by how translation software can break down language barriers, but I know it's still far from perfect. Do you think Sanskrit could help improve machine translation?
Absolutely. One of the most significant challenges in machine translation is capturing those subtle shades of meaning that are often lost in translation. Sanskrit, with its rich vocabulary and that intricate system of roots and affixes, could offer a framework for creating translation systems that are more accurate and nuanced.
So instead of simply translating word for word, an AI could grasp the underlying concepts and convey them more effectively in the target language.
Exactly. It would be like having a translator who not only knows the languages inside and out, but also deeply understands the cultures and thought processes behind those languages.
That would truly be revolutionary for global communication and understanding. Now I'd like to talk about another area where semantic precision is absolutely paramount: artificial intelligence in healthcare. I'm fascinated by the potential for AI to revolutionize healthcare, but I also acknowledge how crucial it is to ensure that these systems are accurate and reliable. How can Sanskrit contribute to that?
That's a vital point. In healthcare, even the smallest errors can have serious consequences. That's where Sanskrit's emphasis on semantic clarity and logical reasoning becomes incredibly valuable.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Imagine an AI system that's been designed to analyze medical records and assist with diagnoses. By incorporating Sanskrit's Nyaya logic principles, this system could be trained to identify patterns in patient data, draw inferences from symptoms, and even question initial assumptions just like a skilled human doctor would.
So it would be like having an AI doctor who can think through those complex medical cases and potentially offer insights that human physicians might miss.
Precisely. And because Sanskrit's logic is so structured and transparent, the reasoning process of the AI would be easily understandable and verifiable, which would help build trust and accountability.
That's extremely important, especially in a field like healthcare where trust is so essential. Are there any other applications of Sanskrit that you can think of in the context of healthcare?
Well, consider drug discovery, for instance. Developing new drugs is an extremely complex and time-consuming endeavor, often involving years of research and clinical trials. Sanskrit's intricate system of classification, particularly within the realm of Ayurveda, could be a valuable tool for accelerating this process.
That's interesting. How would that work?
Ayurveda meticulously categorizes plants and herbs based on their specific medicinal properties. This creates an enormous database of knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries. An AI system that's trained on this knowledge could analyze the chemical structures of various substances and identify potential candidates for new drugs.
So it's like using ancient wisdom to guide modern scientific discovery.
Exactly. This approach could potentially lead to the development of new and effective treatments for diseases that currently have no cure.
That's remarkable. Now, I'd like to shift our focus to another field that's ripe for disruption by AI, the legal profession. The legal system is known for its complexity. There are mountains of paperwork, intricate legal language that can be difficult even for experts to navigate. How could we apply Sanskrit's unique features to simplify and enhance the legal process?
That's a fantastic question. The legal field relies heavily on precision in language, logical reasoning, and the ability to interpret complex texts. Sanskrit, with its focus on these very principles, offers a wealth of possibilities for improving both the efficiency and the accuracy of legal processes.
Can you give us some concrete examples of how this could be implemented?
Of course, legal research is one area where Sanskrit could have a major impact. Imagine an AI system that has been trained on Sanskrit's grammatical rules and the principles of Mimamsa, which we discussed earlier, that school of thought focused on textual interpretation. This AI could analyze legal documents, identify relevant precedents, and even make predictions about how a judge might rule in a particular case.
So it would be like having an AI legal assistant that can sift through those mountains of legal jargon and provide clear, concise summaries and valuable insights.
Exactly.
Yep.
This could potentially save lawyers countless hours of research time and help them build stronger cases.
That's incredible. What other applications can you think of for Sanskrit in the legal field?
Contract analysis is another great example. Contracts are often full of complicated language, legal terminology that can be very difficult for non-lawyers to understand. A Sanskrit-inspired AI could be used to analyze contracts, identify any potential loopholes or ambiguities, and even translate those contracts into plain language that anyone can grasp.
That would be a game changer for both businesses and individuals, empowering them to make more informed decisions.
Absolutely. And this goes beyond just understanding contracts. Sanskrit's principles of logic and reasoning could also be used to develop AI systems that can mediate disputes, assess evidence, and even assist in the legal decision-making process.
So we are essentially talking about a future where AI can help us navigate the intricacies of the legal system and ensure that justice is served fairly and efficiently.
Exactly. And Sanskrit, with its emphasis on clarity, precision, and ethical conduct, could be the bedrock for building that future.
We've discussed how Sanskrit could revolutionize fields like healthcare and law, but now as a touch on another area that's heavily reliant on technology, finance. The world of finance is all about analyzing data, assessing risk, and making predictions about market trends. How could Sanskrit's unique features be applied to such a fast-paced and complex domain?
That's a great question. Finance is centered on managing risk and making informed decisions based on massive amounts of data. And Sanskrit, with its logical frameworks and its emphasis on mathematical precision, is surprisingly well suited for this field.
Could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Let's revisit Nyaya logic for a moment. It's
Yeah.
all about constructing sound arguments, identifying fallacies, and drawing valid inferences from evidence.
Right, I remember our discussion about that earlier.
Well, an AI system that is trained on these principles could potentially analyze financial data, identify areas of potential risk, and make more accurate predictions about market movements.
So it's like having an AI financial advisor that can cut through all the noise and help make smarter investment decisions.
Precisely. And since Sanskrit's logic is so transparent, it would be easy for human analysts to comprehend how the AI reached its conclusions, which builds trust and accountability.
That's absolutely vital in finance, where trust can be fragile. Do you have any other examples of how Sanskrit could be applied to the financial world?
Fraud detection is another excellent example. Financial fraud is a significant issue, costing businesses and individuals billions of dollars every year. A Sanskrit-inspired AI could be trained to analyze patterns in transactions, identify any anomalies that might indicate fraud, and flag potentially fraudulent activity in real time.
So it's like having an AI watchdog constantly on guard to catch those subtle red flags that human analysts might overlook.
Precisely. And this extends beyond just fraud detection. Sanskrit's focus on precision and clarity could also be applied to create financial systems that are more secure and transparent.
So we are essentially discussing a future where AI can help us manage our finances more effectively, protect us from fraud, and even contribute to a more stable and resilient financial system as a whole.
Exactly. And Sanskrit, with its inherent emphasis on ethical conduct and logical reasoning, could play a pivotal role in shaping that future.
It's quite amazing to think that an ancient language could have such a profound impact on the contemporary world of finance.
It really is remarkable. But it shouldn't come as a surprise. The principles that make Sanskrit so powerful for communication, for reasoning, and for knowledge representation are timeless. They're just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago.
Now, I'd like to shift our focus to the human element in all of this. We've talked extensively about the technical aspects of integrating Sanskrit into computing. But what about the people who would be using these systems? How do we make Sanskrit accessible and relevant to a global audience?
That's a crucial question. Even the most brilliant technology is useless if people don't understand how to use it effectively.
Absolutely. So how do we bridge that gap?
It starts with education. We need to introduce the concepts of Sanskrit and its computational potential to a much wider audience.
But Sanskrit is a complex language. It's not like just picking up a few new programming commands. How can we make it approachable for people who have absolutely no prior knowledge of the language?
I think the key is to focus on the core principles and highlight how those principles are relevant to the field of modern computing. We don't need everyone to become Sanskrit scholars.
So it's more about grasping the fundamental logic and structure of Sanskrit, rather than mastering all the intricacies of the language itself.
Precisely. For example, we could teach people about Nyaya logic and how it can be used to enhance their critical thinking abilities. Or we could demonstrate how Sanskrit's grammatical rules can promote clarity and precision in all forms of communication.
Those are valuable skills regardless of your profession, not just in the tech world.
Absolutely. And by establishing those connections, we can demystify Sanskrit and make it more appealing to a broader audience.
Besides education, what else can we do to encourage the adoption of Sanskrit-inspired computing?
I think we need to create tools and resources that make it easier for people to experiment with these concepts. Imagine having online platforms where developers can experiment with Sanskrit-based coding languages or visual interfaces that help them understand how Sanskrit's grammatical structure can be applied to data analysis.
So it's about lowering the barrier to entry and making it a fun and engaging experience for people to explore these ideas.
Exactly. And we can also harness the power of storytelling. Humans are naturally drawn to stories, and we can use compelling narratives to illustrate how Sanskrit is being applied to solve real-world problems.
Like sharing stories about how a Sanskrit-inspired AI system is helping to develop new life-saving medical treatments, or how it's improving access to justice in developing countries.
Precisely. By sharing those stories, we can inspire people to become involved in this exciting field and contribute to its growth.
It's remarkable to think that an ancient language like Sanskrit could ignite a new wave of innovation in our digital world.
It truly is. It all boils down to recognizing the timeless wisdom embedded within Sanskrit and its potential to enhance our lives in countless ways.
Now, as we delve further into this world of Sanskrit and computing, I think it's important to address a concern that some people might have. When we discuss integrating Sanskrit into the realm of technology, there might be some who worry that we're attempting to replace existing programming languages, or that this is somehow about asserting cultural dominance. How would you respond to those concerns?
That's an important point to address. The goal here isn't about replacing anything at all. It's about expanding our horizons and exploring new possibilities.
So it's not about Sanskrit versus other languages. It's about how Sanskrit can complement and enrich the existing landscape of computing.
Exactly. We can learn from the strengths of diverse languages and approaches. Sanskrit isn't meant to be a one-size-fits-all solution. It's more like a valuable addition to our collective toolkit.
It's like adding a new and interesting spice to a recipe. It doesn't replace the other ingredients, but it enhances the overall flavor profile.
That's an excellent analogy. And as for the idea of cultural dominance, that's certainly not the intention at all. Sanskrit's wisdom belongs to the world, and it's something that we can all benefit from regardless of our cultural background.
It's about sharing knowledge, collaborating across cultures, and ultimately working together to create a better future for everyone.
Exactly. And that spirit of collaboration aligns perfectly with the essence of Sanskrit itself, a language that has always been about connecting people and ideas.
Now, let's talk about the ethical implications of incorporating Sanskrit into the world of computing. As we create increasingly powerful AI systems, it's absolutely essential to consider the ethical ramifications of our creations. How can Sanskrit's philosophical principles guide us in developing AI that is not only intelligent, but also ethical and responsible?
That's a vital question to contemplate. As AI becomes more and more integrated into our daily lives, we need to ensure that it reflects our values and ultimately serves the best interests of humanity.
And Sanskrit, with its emphasis on dharma or right conduct, can provide a valuable framework for achieving that.
Absolutely. Sanskrit's ethical principles, as outlined in texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, emphasize concepts such as nonviolence, truthfulness, and compassion. These principles can be translated into practical guidelines for developing AI that is aligned with our shared human values.
Could you provide us with some examples of how that might work in practice?
Certainly, let's imagine an AI system that's designed to make decisions about loan applications. By incorporating the principle of fairness, or dharma, we could ensure that the system doesn't discriminate based on factors like race, gender, or socioeconomic status.
So it's about building ethical considerations directly into the algorithms that drive AI.
Precisely. And Sanskrit's focus on self-awareness and the interconnectedness of all things could inspire us to create AI that is more conscious of its impact on the world around it.
That's a profound thought. It's like teaching AI to be mindful of its actions and the consequences that follow.
It is. And by grounding AI in these ethical principles, we can create a future where technology empowers us and enhances our humanity rather than posing a threat to it.
Now let's take a look ahead. We've explored the incredible potential of Sanskrit within the world of computing, but what does the future hold for this ancient language in our digital age?
I believe we are on the verge of a new era where Sanskrit's wisdom will be recognized and integrated into mainstream computing.
So it's no longer just a niche area of research.
Yeah. Not at all. As more and more people become aware of Sanskrit's computational power, I believe we'll see a significant surge in innovation and development. Imagine Sanskrit-inspired programming languages being taught at universities around the world, AI systems powered by Nyaya logic becoming commonplace, and a global community of developers collaborating to create a more intuitive and humane digital world.
That's an incredibly inspiring vision. What are some of the key trends and developments that we should be watching for in the future?
One exciting trend to keep an eye on is the development of hybrid systems. These systems aim to combine the best of both worlds, the efficiency of modern programming languages with the precision and semantic richness of Sanskrit.
So it's not about completely replacing our existing systems, but rather finding innovative ways to integrate Sanskrit's principles into those systems.
Precisely. Another trend that's worth watching is the growing interest in utilizing Sanskrit to create AI systems that are not only intelligent, but also easily explainable and trustworthy.
Explainable AI. That means being able to clearly understand how an AI system reaches its decisions, right?
Exactly. And Sanskrit's logical frameworks, such as Nyaya logic, can play a key role in making AI more transparent and accountable.
That's crucial, especially as AI becomes more powerful and has a greater influence on our lives.
Absolutely. And finally, I think we'll see a growing movement toward using Sanskrit to develop AI that is fundamentally aligned with our human values, promoting ethical conduct, compassion, and sustainability.
So it's not just about making AI more intelligent, it's about making it wiser and more beneficial to all of humanity.
Precisely. And Sanskrit, with its profound philosophical roots and its emphasis on the interconnectedness of all things, can help us navigate that path effectively.
That's a powerful idea. It's like Sanskrit is offering us a roadmap for a future where technology is truly in service to humanity's highest aspirations.
I wholeheartedly believe that to be true. As we continue to explore the immense potential of Sanskrit within the realm of computing, we will undoubtedly uncover even more ways to utilize this ancient wisdom to create a brighter future for ourselves and generations to come.
I am genuinely grateful that we had this conversation. It has truly expanded my understanding of what is possible when we bridge the gap between the ancient world and the modern, between human wisdom and technological innovation.
I feel the same way. It's a testament to the enduring power of Sanskrit and its ability to inspire us to think differently about the world and our place within it. It's really fascinating to think about how Sanskrit, a language so often associated with ancient rituals and scriptures, could hold the key to building more intuitive, more error-free systems in our digital world.
It's truly mind-boggling, isn't it? We've already talked about how Sanskrit's precision, structure, philosophical depth could potentially revolutionize programming and AI. We've explored how concepts like Anka for numbers, Kriya for functions, Nyaya for logic could be adapted to create a programming paradigm that's both powerful and elegant, but there's so much more to uncover.
Indeed. Today, let's delve into how those Sanskrit-inspired programming constructs we discussed could actually be used to build real-world applications. Do you remember our example of a simple arithmetic program?
Yes, where we used namakana to declare variables and sthira for constants.
Precisely. Now, let's expand on that. Imagine a program to calculate the area of a circle.
Okay, so we need to define the radius And then use the formula. Area equals pi times the radius squared.
Exactly. In our Sanskrit-inspired language, it might look something like this.
Okay.
Namatana anka radius equals 5. Stira pada pi equals 3.14159. Namatana anka area radius. Printa area.
Okay, let me break that down. We are declaring a variable called radius, setting it to 5. Then we're defining pi as a constant. And finally, we're calculating the area using the formula and printing the result. It's so clear and easy to follow.
Precisely. The Sanskrit-inspired keywords and the structure make the code, well, almost self-explanatory, even for someone who's not a programmer.
Now, let's move beyond this simple arithmetic and see how we would handle more complex tasks, like sorting a list of numbers.
That's where those control flow constructs we discussed come in. Remember, niyam for conditional statements and parivartana for loops.
Yes, we had yadi for if, tarhi for then, and anyatha for otherwise. And parivartana was used for repeating an action multiple times.
Exactly. To sort a list, we could use a nested loop structure. The outer parivartana would iterate through each element in the list, while the inner parivartana would compare it to the remaining elements.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Inside those loops, we'd use niyam statements to check if the elements need to be swapped.
So we are essentially using Sanskrit-inspired constructs to implement a classic sorting algorithm.
Precisely. The underlying logic remains the same, but the Sanskrit-based syntax, it adds a layer of clarity and elegance.
This is amazing. It feels almost like we are translating ancient wisdom into the language of modern computing.
Indeed. And this translation has the potential to create systems that are not only more efficient, but also more intuitive for humans to understand and interact with.
Now let's talk about one of the most exciting areas of AI, natural language processing. Last time we briefly touched upon how Sanskrit's grammar and semantic precision could revolutionize the way machines understand and process human language.
Absolutely. Imagine having a voice assistant that can understand not just, the words you speak, but the subtle nuances of your tone and your intent.
That would be incredible.
Currently, most voice assistants rely on keyword recognition and pre-programmed responses. But a Sanskrit-inspired NLP system could go beyond that. It could analyze the grammatical structure of your sentences, the inflections in your voice, even your cultural context, to truly understand what you mean.
So it would be like engaging in a conversation with a machine that actually understands you, not just responds to keywords.
Exactly. A system like that could revolutionize customer service, education, even therapy. Think about a chatbot that can provide emotional support, or an AI tutor that can personalize lessons based on a student's individual learning style.
That's incredible. And what about machine translation? I've always been amazed by how translation software can break down those language barriers, but I know it's still far from perfect. Could Sanskrit help improve that?
Definitely. One of the biggest challenges in machine translation is capturing those subtle shades of meaning that are often lost in translation. Sanskrit, with its rich vocabulary and that intricate system of roots and affixes, could provide a framework for creating translation systems that are more accurate and nuanced.
So instead of simply translating word for word, an AI could understand those underlying concepts and convey them more effectively. In its arguments.
Yeah, it would be like having a translator who not only, knows the languages, but understands those cultures and thought processes behind them.
That would be a game changer for global communication and understanding. Now let's talk about another area where semantic precision is paramount: artificial intelligence in healthcare. I'm fascinated by the potential for AI to revolutionize healthcare, but I also recognize how crucial it is to ensure that these systems are accurate and reliable. How can Sanskrit contribute to that?
That's a crucial point. In healthcare, even small errors can have serious consequences. That's where Sanskrit's emphasis on semantic clarity and logical reasoning comes in.
Can you give us some examples?
Imagine an AI system designed to analyze medical records and assist with diagnosis. By incorporating Sanskrit's principles of Nyaya logic, the system could learn to identify patterns in patient data, draw inferences from symptoms, and even question initial assumptions, just like a skilled human doctor.
So it would be like having an AI doctor who can reason through those complex medical cases and potentially offer insights that might be missed by human physicians.
Exactly, and because Sanskrit's logic is so structured and transparent, the reasoning process of the AI would be very easy to follow and verify, ensuring accountability and trust.
That's incredibly important, especially in a field like healthcare. Where trust is paramount. Are there any other applications of Sanskrit that you can think of in the context of healthcare?
Well, consider drug discovery, for instance. Developing new drugs is a complex and time-consuming endeavor, often involving years of research and clinical trials. Sanskrit's intricate system of classification, particularly within the realm of Ayurveda, could be a valuable tool for accelerating this process.
How so?
Ayurveda categorizes plants and herbs based on their specific medicinal properties. This creates a massive database of knowledge that's been accumulated over centuries. An AI system trained on this knowledge could analyze the chemical structures of various substances and identify potential candidates for new drugs.
It was like using ancient wisdom to guide modern scientific discovery.
Precisely. And this approach could lead to the development of new treatments for diseases that currently have no cure.
That's truly remarkable. Now, as we wrap up our exploration of Sanskrit and its potential in computing, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Sanskrit isn't, just some dusty relic of the past. It's a vibrant source of knowledge with incredible relevance to the digital age. Its principles of precision, logic, and a deep focus on meaning can unlock new frontiers in programming, artificial intelligence, and far beyond.
It's been an incredible journey, exploring those unexpected connections between this ancient language and the future of technology. We've seen how Sanskrit's unique features could lead to more intuitive programming, more insightful AI, and perhaps even a deeper understanding of consciousness itself. Thank you for joining us on The World of Sanskrit and Computing. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and are as excited as we are about the possibilities that lie ahead.